born. So let's try to recite this. Tasmad Ajnana Sambhutam. So Rit is heart. Stham is situated. So Rit Stham, that which is situated in the heart. What? Ajnan, the ignorance is in the heart. And how do you fight it? Gyan Asin. Gyan is knowledge. Ajnan and Gyan are opposite. Asin is sword. So the sword of knowledge, Atmana, within ourselves. So Ritstham Gyan Asin Atmanaha. This is a lot of more complicated verses, but just if you split the words Gyan Asin Atmanaha. Ritstham Gyan Asin Atmanaha. Chittva. Chittva means to cut. So just like the sword, we cut objects. So Chittva enam, cut this. Samshayam yogam. Samshaya, doubts, hesitation, indecision. You cut that, Arjuna. Yogam, by practicing yoga. And Atishta. Atishta, Arjuna, arise. Uttishta. Now, Arjuna, arise. Arise physically, arise emotionally. Bharata. Oh, Arjuna, he is a descendant of Bharata. Chitvainam samshayam yogam. Atishto tishta bharata. Is it visible to everyone behind? Yes. Let's see if we increase the font size. Tasmad ajnana sambhutam. Ritstham jnanasinatmanaha. Chitvainam samshayam yogam. Atishto tishta bharata. Tasmad ajnana sambhutam. Ritstham jnanasinatmanaha. Chitvainam samshayam yogam. Atishto tishta bharata. Would anyone like to recite?
Tasmadajnana sambhutam. Ritstham jnanasinatmanaha. Chitvainam samshayam yogam. Atishto tishta bharata.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Tasmad ajnana sambhutam. Ritstham jnanasinatmanaha. Chitvainam samshayam yogam. Atishto tishta bharata.
Yes.
Tasmadajnana sambhutam.
Ritstham jnanasinatmanaha.
Chitvainam samshayam yogam.
Chitvainam samshayam yogam.
Atishto tishta bharata.
Any other kids like to try?
Tasmad ajnana sambhutam. Ritstham jnanasinatmanaha. Chitvainam samshayam yogam. Atishto tishta bharata.
Thank you. So today we'll discuss on the topic of tap the power of anger. And I'll use a PowerPoint, but I'll also alternate between using various aspects of the PowerPoint. So now, we'll discuss these three things: a deeper look at anger, learning from anger, and using anger instead of being used by anger. The broad three things. So overall, the whole what I'm going to speak today can be summarized in one sentence, which I'll tell right now, and we'll come back to this. It is anger is a powerful messenger, but a dreadful instructor. Anger is what? A powerful messenger. When it gives a message, we can't neglect that message. But if we treat it as a messenger, it's good. It's a powerful messenger. But if we take it as an instructor, do this, don't do this, that's a terrible instructor. It's a dreadful instructor. What do I mean by this? Anger, the powerful messenger means that, and when do we get angry? Anger is actually an expensive emotion. Right? It takes a toll psychologically, physically. So when do we get angry? When something is seriously wrong with something that is seriously important for us. So in that sense, anger wants that. Some messenger very meek. Oh, please listen to me. Listen to me, please. I want to say something. Listen to me. Anger is like that. Anger is a powerful messenger. When anger arrives, it's very difficult to neglect it. So it's a powerful messenger which indicates that something is seriously wrong with something that is seriously important. However, one thing is to point out the problem, but the other thing is to point out the solution. Anger is very good at pointing out the problem, that there is some problem. But anger is terrible at pointing out the solution. So in that sense, it's a dreadful instructor. What anger tells us to do often gets us into far greater trouble than the trouble that we were in. Often, there's the cause of anger and the consequence of anger. And often, the consequence of anger is far worse than the cause of anger. So in that sense, anger is a terrible instructor. So let's look at this more systematically. Now, this is a verse from the Bhagavad Gita. And the Bhagavad Gita is a conversation between two people. Who are those two people? Krishna and Arjuna, yes. And where is it spoken? Yes, in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Now, a battle is about to happen. And most people cannot really fight unless there is some level of strong emotion involved. Fighting is strong action. And strong action is generally very difficult without strong emotion. So, what's happening is there are strong emotions involved. So, Krishna is telling Arjuna that there has been injustice against you, against your family. The people who are doing it are still at large. The people who have done it are still brazen. So, who is the main villain in the Mahabharata? Duryodhana. Duryodhana, he was so brazen that even when he was just a teenager, he made a whole conspiracy to poison his cousin. Which cousin was that? The Pandava, specifically Bhima. So this is a teenager. There are some people who get angry. And everybody gets angry sometime or other. But when anger is not processed properly, anger grows into hatred. To quote Yoda from Star Wars. So what does he say? That attachment leads to anger, anger leads to hate, and hate leads to suffering. So now, can anyone say what is the difference between anger and hate? Are they the same thing? No, okay. They're not the same thing. And what is the difference between anger and hate?
It's good.
Yeah.
Hate is the outcome of anger. It's a processed anger.
Processed. Is it constructively processed or destructively processed?
I mean, destructively.
Okay, so you could say that anger is the initial stage, hate is the eventual stage. Okay, so anger is a more, because hate is a more hardened form of anger. Yeah, that is true.
Once you hate, then the anger kind of goes away. But even somebody does something right or good, then also you ignore it, start ignoring it. But once you are angry, you can go back to a place where if somebody does a good or then you start loving. But once you start hating, you can't go back.
That's a good point. So anger, you could say, is more temporary, and whereas hate is far more lasting. It's almost irreversible. Yes, it's a good point. Yes. Yes. They're all valid points. Just trying to approach the subject from different points.
And anger could be immediate reaction or temporary, like you said. Hate is something which is internal and may stay for may develop over a period of time.
So hate develops over a period of time. Whereas anger is it just appears instantaneously. When it appears. Okay, that's true. Yes, thank you. Yeah. Yes. Hate is just another form of anger. Okay, but is it a better form or a worse form? Worse form. Why is it worse?
Anger, it drives you to hate somebody, and then when you hate somebody, then it becomes very hard for you to go back to that.
Hate, anger drives you to hate, and it's very difficult to go back. So when you hear this irritating sound, did it make you angry or it made you hate the sound? Neither. Okay, that's good. Yes, thank you. That's a good point. Yeah.
So I think anger is more impulsive, it's more in the limbic brain, something which is out of your control. Because hate is more in your belief system, how I see things. It affects.
Anger, because hate is much more inside us, much deeper inside us.
Yes,
it's more integrated part of who we are. That is true. Yeah, it's like some people have short tempers because anger is also part of who they are. But I get what you're coming from. Now, all your answers are right. I would like to phrase it in one way. It's not that any of the answers were not right. But the way I put it is, anger is hot-headed. Hate is cold-blooded. So hot-headed means what? Just somebody does something and a rush of hot blood comes up and we do something. So in that sense, what you said, it's temporary. It comes, it's sometimes out of control. This comes and it goes. And we often do things. Anger can also be destructive. In the spell of anger, we do things which we may regret later. But anger is hot-headed. Whereas hate is cold-blooded. Cold-blooded means, see, when somebody is angry, generally you can see that they are angry. Unless either we are blind or we are blind to emotional intelligence. You can see a person angry. But if a person hates, they may actually conceal it. And they can become very calculative and manipulative. So in that sense, hate is far more dangerous. And also, put another perspective, generally speaking, we have our intelligence and we have our conscience. Both of these act like our inner defense. Our intelligence rationally tells us, hey, this should not be done. And our conscience emotionally tells us, at the level of the heart, hey, this is not good, don't do this. But when a person is cold-blooded, their intelligence, so when we are angry, anger is like a force which knocks aside our intelligence and goes ahead. But when you become cold-blooded, actually the intelligence is not knocked aside. Intelligence is what propels the negative energy. And if a person is planning sinisterly, And they use their intelligence. They use their intelligence to plan out where to hit the other person, where to hurt the other person, how I can hurt the most. So in that sense, hatred is far, far more toxic. And anger may arise in all of us at some time or the other. But we need to be careful that anger does not metastasize. It's like a cancer. A small tumor may metastasize into cancer, and that is dangerous. So anger is something which will come in all of us, but when anger metastasizes into hate, then it is dangerous. It is especially dark and dangerous. So now Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita tells Arjuna that although Krishna is telling Arjuna to fight, but it's remarkable that Krishna tells Arjuna, do not entertain any anger. He says anger is a doorway to hell. Trividham narkasedam dwaram nashinam atmanaha kama krodha sudha lobhas tasmadeta trayam vijayet. It says lust, anger and greed are 3 gateways to hell. He says avoid them. And then what might be the reason to fight if somebody is not to have any anger? So Krishna says there are multiple reasons. There is fighting for revenge and there is fighting for justice. So when one is fighting for revenge, it is out of anger, it can also be out of hate. But when one is fighting for justice, then it ideally should not be out of anger, certainly not out of hate. That is why in the entire Bhagavad Gita, Krishna doesn't even once mention any of the atrocities that were done against the Pandavas, that they tried to burn. That I was talking about the difference between anger and hate, because Duryodhana, I said that as a teenager itself, he made a whole scheme to try to poison Bhima. So the very fact he invited them for a feast, and he put a special feast for Bhima, and in that feast he had a very strong acting poison, very strong but relatively slow acting poison. So all that indicates, so this action of Duryodhana, it indicates, was it anger or was it hate that made him poison Bhima? Yes. It's not hot-headed, you make a whole plan. And afterwards, he even tried to burn all the Pandavas alive, including their mother. Then he invited them to a rigged gambling match. Not invited, almost compelled them to come. And in that he stripped them of all their wealth and then stripped the Pandavas' wife Draupadi of her honor. So this was all very cold-blooded. Now Krishna wanted Arjuna to fight, but Krishna wanted to ensure that Arjuna does not fight at the same level of consciousness at which Duryodhana is fighting. Duryodhana was motivated by hate, not just anger but hate. But Krishna did not want Arjuna to fight that way. That you fight for justice. Yes, there have been wrongs that have happened, but focus not on Krishna tells Arjuna, get the personal element out of your actions. These people have done wrong to you, but don't just fight to settle scores. Fight because if these people are allowed unchallenged power, they will do similar and worse things to all of society. Therefore, you have to stop them. So in one sense, Krishna is telling Arjuna when he's fighting to tap the power of anger. Not be controlled by anger, but to use that aggression constructively. So to analyze, to understand this point, let's consider at 3 levels. There is anger as emotion, anger as intention, and anger as action. So we basically act at 3 levels. Emotion, we feel something. Intention, we resolve to do something. And action is we actually do it. So anger as emotion, anger as intention, and anger as action. So is anger a bad thing or a good thing? What do you think? How many of you think anger is a bad thing? Okay. Yeah. How many of you think anger is a good thing? Oh, okay. Good. How many of you think that this question is a bad thing? Okay. So actually speaking, let's see. I said I may not show the whole PowerPoint because this is a 3-part session which I have. So this is one figure which illustrates the same thing, that if we consider the state of our emotions, when we have no emotions at all, then we go toward depression, we go to lethargy, we go towards apathy. And that is not good. So if you, here, basically what he's saying is that these are the 3 horizontal lines are like the grids or the levels. And the triangular kind of line, the line which goes up and down, that's like the way our emotion goes up and down. So if we have no emotion at all, that's not a very good thing. Emotion often gives energy. No, if we go to a child's school and we see there's some big bully, abusing or beating some small helpless child, and if we don't feel anything at all, seeing a child being bullied is a matter of concern. And if someone doesn't feel concern, then that is a matter of concern. Isn't it? What's wrong with you? Don't you have any human sense? Don't you have any empathy? So there are many things when there's something wrong with them, we need to feel some concern, even some anger. That's why outrage is not always a bad thing, because there are sometimes things that happen that are outrageous. So anger as an emotion is not a bad thing. Anger indicates that we care. Anger indicates that we care. Anger indicates that something is seriously wrong about something that we care. So when we have a moderate level of emotion, then what happens is we have hope, we have energy. Yes, things can improve. I can play a part in improving things. Every day when we wake up, there can be so many things wrong in life. We may just feel, why do I ever do anything? There's an existentialist philosopher who said that life is nothing but suffering. Therefore, the only philosophical question worth asking is whether to commit suicide today or tomorrow. This is Alberto Camus. Now, he had many good insights, but somehow toward the end, his existentialism got in his way of getting really deep insights. So the point is that we all, when we wake up, we feel that things can be better and I can play a part in making things better. So hope is that things can become better. Energy is I can play a part in making things better. So in general, that's what enables us to move. But when we want things to be better, and when we are trying to make things better, suppose we see that things have gone wrong, and things have gone terribly wrong, then that's when our emotion becomes very high. And anger as an emotion is not bad. But if that anger as an emotion itself leads to anger as an action, we act out of anger, then eventually the emotion goes down, the energy goes down. But that graph is, there is guilt and there is shame. Oh, why did I speak like that? Why did I do like that? Shame is more external. Oh, I made a spectacle of myself in front of everyone. And guilt is more personal, internal. I should not have acted like that. And these are unhealthy. Not in the sense that these emotions themselves are bad, but rather they indicate that some undesirable, unhealthy action is being done. So what we want to do is that if we consider the second level in the bar graph, now we would like to our emotions to be at the level of hope and energy. If they rise to the level of anger, they can become destructive. If the absence of anger is also bad. To put this more simply, you can envision a pendulum. A pendulum, in one side, there is total absence of anger all the time. When you see this person is very stoic and unflappable. But then after something, is this person a human being or a robot? There are things which you should get worked up about. You don't get ever worked up about. Is something wrong with you? Something missing with you? So one extreme of the pendulum could be absence of anger. The other extreme of the pendulum could be dominance by anger. Whatever a person, they just control by anger and they do things immediately based on anger. So we could one in between is channeling the power of anger. Channeling the power of anger. And how do we do that? For that, we need to separate this anger as an emotion, anger as an intention, anger as action. So anger as an emotion, yes. Okay, I'm feeling angry right now. Many times what happens is that suppose we resolve, I will not get angry. Or will not get angry. And then somebody does something that starts making us angry. And then if you have told others, I'm not going to get, I made a resolution, I'll not get angry. And then they start telling, hey, you're getting angry. Hey, you're getting angry. No, I'm not getting angry. So what happens is sometimes our mind is so sneaky that we get angry about having gotten angry. I resolve I'll not get angry, but I get angry, and then I get angry, why did I become angry? So we don't want to get caught in that. So what do? Anger as an emotion is to some extent not in our control. If we care about certain things, when we care about those things, if something goes wrong in those things, naturally some anger will come. Anger as an emotion is not is neither a bad thing, nor is it always in our control. Like we could say, emotions are psychological reactions to changes in our life. It's like if this temperature drops a bit. Now, different people have different levels of thermal sensitivities. Some people can tolerate cold quite a bit. Some people can't tolerate cold much. Now, if the temperature drops and somebody says, I'm feeling cold. And then the neighbor says, don't feel cold. He says, what do you mean, don't feel cold? It's not a choice, I'm feeling cold. Isn't it? So just as cold is a sensation that is not in our control. Similar, why is it not in our control? In the sense that it is a default physical reaction to a change in the outer world. So just as there can be physical changes which are almost default, that will happen when there are some external changes. So similarly, there are psychological changes that can happen. And anger could be, as an emotion, could be psychological. I'm feeling angry. Okay. It's like I'm feeling cold. See it a little more clinically. Is I'm feeling cold? Now does that mean, what does it mean? It could mean that okay, I need to get some warm clothes. Maybe I need to move away from the window. Or maybe this is just a short while. I can tolerate it for that much time. We can decide what to do. But denying I'm feeling cold is not of much use. So similarly, accept, okay, I'm feeling angry. Now, so anger as a messenger cannot be silenced. If we repress anger, I'm feeling angry, but I will not express my anger. I'll completely conceal it. I will even deny it to others. I'll deny it to myself and deny it to others. Then that's when that anger will get bottled inside and have a nasty explosion. Like some people think this person is so calm and cool. And one day they explode. Who are you? What kind of, I never knew this kind of you existed. What happened is there are 16,662 wrongs that they repressed. 16,662 instances where they could have got angry and they repressed it. And when the 16,663rd thing happened, it's not just that incident that they reacted to. All the accumulated bottled energy, resentment of all the previous wrongs is now coming off an explosion. So instead of having that kind of explosion, it's important to acknowledge. And acknowledge, I'm not saying act, acknowledge. Okay, I am feeling angry. So anger is a message. Okay, I listen to it. Okay, something is wrong right now. I listen to it. But see, we can't always control our emotions, but we can control our actions. If we try to control our emotions, we won't succeed. And then those emotions will control us and they will lead to actions. So again, when we use another pendulum, you see there is one is repressing our emotions. If we repress our anger, we will burn inside. If we express our angers, others will burn inside. So what do? In between repressing and expressing is processing. So we need to process our anger. So repressing will burn us, expressing will burn others. Processing will enable us to channel that energy. So how do we go about doing that? 2 points I'll make. But at this point, are there any questions? Is there any anger about the topic of anger? Yeah,
I was
please.
thinking what you said. So yeah, anger is to acknowledge anger. I mean, is there. So you have to understand why I'm feeling that, why that is irritating. But it is good to express it, express instead of contain that. And then of course after you express, it's kind of like you forget. I just needed to let it out first, so it's now I'm okay, and then actually medicate why, or before actually express it, that process to try to acknowledge and understand why, and all this is happening at the same time, right in my head. I'm feeling anger, I'm angry, but why am I feeling that way? Should I stress it? Should I contain it?
Okay. See, the word express can mean multiple things. Yeah, expression can also be an explosion, isn't it? So anger as an expression through explosion is may not be healthy. Most of the time it will not be healthy. But when this expression means if within a relationship where we are understood, where we are trusted, I'm feeling angry about the way this person treated me. That kind of expression is more a safe vent. If otherwise it will lead to an explosion. So explosion is not healthy. But now how to process it as a part of processing it, sometimes you might express it to a friend or somebody who we trust. Okay, what exactly made you angry? That person, every time they promise something, they never do it. They take me so lightly, they take me for granted. I'm fed up with being treated like a doormat. Okay, then what exactly happened? Are you sure this is because that person was treating you negatively, or was that person going through something else because of which this happened? And they may help us to think it through. So we are all individuals, and we have individual ways of dealing with our emotions. So some people who are more introverts, they may be more introspective, more reflective, and they may be able to process it internally. Some people may need to express it to someone and think things through. Some people may journal it. One of my close friends, he told me that he's a little older than me, or 20 years older than me. We were very close to each other. So he said that I've got a cupboard full of my journals. And in my will, I have written along with my body, all my journals should be burnt. I asked him why that. He says, my journals are filled with my anger. I had a lot of anger, and I processed that anger through my journals. So if people at home are angry, so I will just vomit out of my anger, vomit out all my anger in my journal. And then afterward, that will help me process it. We need some vent. So we need some vent, so I will just write it down. And then after that, once it is out of that, as long as thoughts are going on inside our head, they keep congesting. Just keep going round and round and round. If this fan is going round and round, in the fan where a car wheel, it will go a huge distance. But the fan is just going round and round, it doesn't cover any distance. But at least you can say the fan is cooling us down. But inside of that, thoughts go round and round, they don't go anywhere, and they don't cool us down, they heat us up. So it's the opposite. So what happens is that we need to process anger. So processing could be just by thinking about deeply. Processing could be by talking with someone, not the person whom we are angry with. Generally, that person won't help us to process anger because it just provoke us more. Somebody else whom we can trust, and then, or it could be writing down and journaling, and then we journal it out, and then afterwards we reread it. Okay, what exactly is there? This is a reasonable point. Now here I'm making too many assumptions. Here I'm wording myself very harshly. Here, maybe I just don't know enough information. What exactly? So whatever is our anger, whatever made us angry, we write it all down, and then we reread it after it has been done. Maybe a few hours after that, or after a day, we reread this. We reread it, try to find out. So now, when I'm talking about this, does it address your question? Thank you. You had a question.
Yeah. So doesn't everyone feel hate and anger differently? So when you're angry, you might be calculating, and when you're
hating or liking something else. So how could you say the guy I'm sacrificing who tried to burn his cousins that he was hating? He could have just been hating.
Okay. So don't different people feel anger and hate differently? Well, yes, to some degree it is true. At the same time, words have certain meanings. So, we all have emotions, and emotions don't come inside us, come from inside with the label. Hey, I'm anger. You like me? I'm going to take control of you and I'm going to ruin your life now. Whatever emotion comes from inside us, it doesn't come with a label. Whether it's anger or hate, whatever emotion they are calling it, it is a designation or identification that we give to for us to understand what it is. There is an emotion inside us. See, if we say I'm happy, now there could be degrees of happiness. I'm satisfied. I'm delighted. I'm ecstatic. I'm thrilled. I'm elated. I am overjoyed. So all these are emotions of happiness. You could also have opposite thing. I'm unhappy. I'm heartbroken. I'm shattered. I'm irritated. I'm peeved. I'm annoyed. I'm upset. These are all emotions. Now, these are a spectrum, isn't it? What somebody may call as an annoyance, somebody else may say, hey, you're furious. Yes. So somebody will say, don't ever make me angry. You mean you're not angry right now? Yes. When I'm angry, you will know. Well, I know right now. Like that. So different people may identify the emotions differently. But broadly speaking, when we say hate, generally it means it is something which is settled down, which has been there for a long time, and which makes a person very desensitized to others' emotions. When we are angry, we feel that people are taking me for granted, people are not listening to me. Anger is, I want to get some control back. And we do something, and afterwards that emotional temperature goes down. But hate is far more sensitive in general. When there is hate, I just want to destroy this person. I want to humiliate this person. I want to character assassinate this person, whatever it may be. So it's much more calculated. So we could say that on the spectrum, there is different people may experience anger differently. Different people may experience hate differently. But still, anger and hate are not the same thing. They are different. I hope that addresses your question. Okay.
I have a question about this chart.
Okay, yes.
So when you're saying when you act in your anger, you might feel guilt and shame. But what if when you're talking about bully, like if you're a parent and you see someone bullying a small child, and you say something about that, later on, how will you feel guilt and shame?
Okay, that's the point. I say anger as a emotion can be good, but when we are angry, at that time, what do? Suppose, say, there's this bully who does something, who's doing something, we're angry, and we go up and beat up the bully. Assume that. Anger doesn't usually allow us to act rationally. So when I say anger as an emotion leads to anger as anger expressed through action, then generally that action is impulsive, is short-sighted, and that is when it leads to guilt or shame. If anger is as an emotion is processed, okay, this bully is doing this, what should I do? I have to do something about it. Maybe I have to report that bully's parents, or I have to report the principal, or I have to call the cops, or maybe I have to stage an intervention. Right? We think, we analyze, and then we act. Then that will not lead to guilt and shame. When we let anger control us and take us over, usually that ends up making things worse. I'm making it clear the difference. After we process, I'm feeling angry, I need to do something about it. But what I should do? Let me think about it. Plan properly and let me do that. Then we won't feel guilt or shame at all, because then we'll act wisely. Okay. Any other questions? So now I'll take two more parts and then we will have conclusion along with a few questions. So till now I talked about first how the Bhagavad Gita is a book which is guiding Arjuna to tap the power of anger. Don't act out of revenge. Where fighting means some strong emotion is there, but don't fight for revenge, fight for justice. Not just to get back at the people who have hurt you, but to protect society from malicious elements like these. Then we differentiate between anger and hatred, anger and hate. And now we talk about how anger as an emotion is not bad always, and anger as an emotion is something which we may not be able to control. But anger as action, how do we ensure that? No problem, that's fine. So anger is an emotion. If we learn to neither repress it nor just express it uncritically, but rather we process it. So what we were discussing about how to process it in different ways. Now we may say that actually when I get angry, I can't think of any of this. I just want to express it. I just want to explode. Okay, that may happen. And we can't always control that. But we can. We may not be able to process the anger the moment it happens. But over a period of time, if we become a little self-observant, we will be able to understand in which kind of situations I tend to be angry. So, okay, when I'm with this person, sometimes some people bring the best out of us, and there are some people who seem to bring the worst out of us. What is that? Some people bring happiness wherever they go, and some people bring happiness whenever they go. So sometimes it may be that some people just provoke us. So if we know in advance, okay, when I am with this person, sometimes my voice comes up. So we can be forewarned. Okay, when I am with this person, maybe I have to be more cautious. I can't just let myself get carried away. Or sometimes we know we all have certain capacities. In one day, maybe 5 things go wrong, 5 people irritate us. That's maybe a given capacity. But the 6th person, they irritate us, then all the combined anger from the 5th, 5 people will come out of the 6th person. So we can anticipate. Now I'm at my breaking point, nearing my breaking point. So it could be people, it could be situations, it could be our own capacities that are being existed. So we all have certain willpower by which we can restrain our anger. But our willpower has limits. It's not infinite. So just like when we start feeling hungry, when we start feeling weak, then say, now I have to eat food. If I try to do too much energy demanding activity, I'll collapse. So like that, by self-observation, we can understand which situations tend to provoke and try to be more careful with your approach. Like if this is our home and this is our workplace, and we go along this road, and maybe there are a couple of bumps along the way. Now what happens is, first time we go, we may not notice the bump. We are going at a high speed and we get jolted. Second time we go, oh, there's a bump over here, we slow down. So like that, if we come to know that during our normal course of life, there are certain times we get angry. So then be prepared for it. Either if they're already beyond a capacity, then we avoid that situation. Okay, let's have this meeting tomorrow. Let's not talk about it today. Okay, so we know our capacities and we act within our limits. And that is where humility comes in. Humility doesn't mean letting others walk over us, but humility means accepting our finiteness and the limits that come because of our finiteness. So this kind of situation, I can't bear without getting angry. So I need to prepare better. Maybe let's talk it tomorrow. Maybe let's go with someone else who will calm me down. This person provokes me. So humility is a very powerful tool in minimizing the control that anger will have on us. Recognize our finiteness and we accept the limits that come because of finiteness and avoid provocative situations. But you may say, I can't always do that. And that is true. And that brings us to the second part. That when we are angry, so at that time, anger comes like waves. if we are in the ocean and waves are coming, we may decide, I'll not get swept away by the wave. Well, okay, that's good to say. But when actually the wave will come, it is going to sound, we don't know how big the wave is going to be. So a wave like a tsunami comes, it will just sweep us away completely. What can we do at that time? Well, no matter how strong we are, we can't stop that wave. We can't avoid getting swept away if we focus on fighting against it. But instead, if we look for an anchor and try to hold on to that anchor, the same energy we would spend in trying to fight against the wave, if we use that energy to hold on to an anchor, then the chances that we will be swept away by the wave are lesser. We hold on to the anchor, not fight against the wave. The wave hits us, the wave flings us a little bit, but because we're holding on to the anchor, we come back to the right position. So what do we mean by an anchor? So if anger comes like a wave, what will be the anchor to fight the wave of anger? So that is what will stabilize us. We have to find it. In the Ramayana, after Kaikeyi has Ram exiled to the forest. Most of you know the basic story of the Ramayana. So Ramayana is basically, Ram is the Lord incarnated on this world, very virtuous, but he's unfairly sent to the forest because Kaikeyi, his stepmother, wants her son Bharat to be the king. Now what happens is, after Ram goes to the forest, his father Dashrath dies of a broken heart. And then his other sons, Bharat and Shatrugna, come back. And when Bharat and Shatrugna come back, at that time Bharat is very angry with his mother when he comes to know what she has done. And then Kaikeyi has been instigated by one of her maids. Who is that maid? Manthara. So now what has happened is, Manthara, she had her own axe to grind. And she was the favorite maidservant of Kaikeyi, and Kaikeyi was the favorite queen of Dashrath. So if Dashrath was no longer the king, Ram became the king, then Kaikeyi would lose her position in the court. And if Kaikeyi lost her position in the court, then Manthara would lose her position. So Manthara had, that's why I made this whole scheme. And then when Shatrugna saw Manthara, after Kaikeyi's scheme had succeeded and her son was to become the king, Kaikeyi had profusely rewarded Manthara. She had given expensive jewelry and very expensive clothes, far more than what a normal maid could wear. And she was walking proudly through the palace. She's just coming out of Kaikeyi's palace. And when Shatrugna saw her, he was enraged to see her in such prosperity. Just raced up to her and caught her. Started shaking her violently. She started screaming for help. And Kaikeyi came out. She said, Shatrugna, stop! Shatrugna was so angry, he didn't listen to her at all. And then at that moment, Bharat and Shatrugna were together, they were very close to each other. So they were just going out of the palace, out of the court to their palace. And on the way, Bharat had been accosted by one of the courtiers, wanted to ask him something. And Shatrugna had gone ahead. But when Manthara started screaming, Bharat heard, and Bharat also came there. And Bharat told Shatrugna. So actually what happened was, Shatrugna was with Manthara. Kaikeyi was telling Shatrugna, stop! But Shatrugna was in no mood to listen. And that time, Bharat came over there. And then Kaikeyi desperately told Bharat, please tell Shatrugna to stop. And then Bharat spoke something which caused Shatrugna to stop. And he said, Shatrugna, what you are doing with Manthara, I have felt 100 times stronger impulse to do that not only with Manthara, but with my own mother. I was shocked to hear this. But he said, however, if we hurt either Manthara or Kaikeyi in any way, Ram will never forgive us. And we want Ram to come back to the kingdom. Therefore, please stop. So what is going on? Immediately when Shatrugna heard this, he stopped. So what happened over here is that when somebody has done something wrong to us, at that time we start thinking how terrible this person is. I want to teach this person a lesson. And it may be entirely true that that person has done something terrible and they deserve to be taught a lesson. But if we are thinking only in, okay, this person is here, I am here, and my actions, and this person will teach them a lesson. We live in an interconnected world. And our actions don't just affect us, it affects others also. So somebody may have made us very angry, and we say, don't get angry with that person. That may be very difficult. But if there's someone else who is more important for us, how will my action affect that person? We all have some people whom we love, whom we care for, whose respect and affection we treasure. So how will my action in this relationship affect that person? Affect my relationship with that person? So that relationship, which is a very strong and defining relationship for us, that is like our anchor. And it's one of the anchors we can have. So what do I mean by anchor? Here, a negative emotion is coming over here. It's like a wave that is coming. But my anchor is my most important relationship. I don't want anything to affect my most important relationship. Therefore, okay, what you have done, this is terrible, but I'm not going to let your actions control my behavior because there are more important things for me. So, quite often the opposite of anger is said to be tolerance. Sometimes tolerance is seen as passivity. When you tolerate, you let people walk over you. But that is not actually the point of tolerance. Tolerance means to keep small things small so that we can focus on big things. So for Bharat and Shatrugna, their relationship with Ram was the big thing. And as compared to that, okay, what Manthara had done, what Kaikeyi had done, that was a small thing. So tolerance means to keep small things small so that we can focus on big things. And if we find ourselves getting angry over small things, that is quite often because we haven't determined what is the big thing for us. What is truly important for us? When we determine that, then small things will no longer irritate us, will no longer sap our emotional energy because our emotions will be invested in bigger things. And that is where bhakti can act as the strongest anchor. We can have many anchors. Like a wave is coming, I hold on to an anchor and the wave doesn't sweep me away. But sometimes a wave will be so strong that I just can't hold on to the anchor and just rip away from the anchor. But Krishna is like an anchor who extends throughout the ocean. Krishna is always there with us. And yes, we may be swept away, but wherever we get swept away, Krishna is still there. Wherever we are, we can turn toward Krishna, we can pray to Krishna, we can chant his holy names. We can focus our consciousness on him. And that way we can hold on to the Krishna anchor. And the more we train ourselves to hold on to the Krishna anchor, the more we chant his holy names, the more we worship him, the more we hear about him, we'll find our capacity to withstand the waves of anger will increase. We will not be so controlled by anger. And rather, we will be able to address the issues underlying that anger in a more mature and more constructive way. Which is what Arjuna did, and which is what the Gita can guide each one of us to do. So I'll summarize. I spoke today about broadly 3 points. There's one sentence just as a summary of the class. Does anyone remember that sentence? Anger is a
Great messenger, but it's a dreadful.
It's not a good instructor.
Yes. Anger is a powerful messenger, but a dreadful instructor. That means anger gives us a message. Something is seriously wrong about something that is important for us. But what it tells us to do is fix the situation, that is often a terrible, that often makes things worse. So in that connection, I discussed about how first, when Arjuna is getting angry, Arjuna is fighting a war, but Krishna tells Arjuna, don't be controlled by anger, don't fight for revenge, but rather channel with strong emotion to act for justice. And then in that connection, further, the general principle behind the Bhagavad Gita discuss that we separate anger as an emotion, anger as an intention, and anger as action. So anger as intention can very easily become hate. I have that intention, I want to lash out at the person and wait for that opportunity. And then anger as intention maintained for a long time can become hate. Anger as an emotion is just a psychological reaction to a life event. That's okay. We can't control it, just as we can sometimes feel cold. We can't control that cold. But we can choose how we respond to the sensation of cold. And similarly, we can choose how we respond to the emotion of anger. For processing that, sometimes it may be, we can ask us think deeply, we can talk with somebody trustworthy, we can write in our journal, and then try to get to what is actually wrong and how can I best deal with it. And that brings us to anger as action. So for us to be able to hold on, that when anger comes and we just explode, if I to avoid that, we can't immediately change the way we react when we are provoked. But first thing is we can find out what are the times, what are the situations when I get provoked, and we try to prepare for those situations. So we know our willpower is a finite capacity and we don't extend it. Humility means to accept our finiteness and to act within the limits. So that's one aspect of it, is self-observation, to know our limitations. And the second is finding our anchor. When anger comes like a wave, it may not be possible for us to avoid getting swept away by fighting against the wave, by holding on to anchor. So this person making me angry, but this person and mine is not my most important relationship. I have other relationships that are more important. And how I act in this relationship is going to affect that relationship. It's not worth acting on this relationship. Just like Bharat calms Shatrugna by reminding him of how his actions would affect Ram. So for us, bhakti enables us to connect with Krishna, who is like an anchor who extends throughout the ocean, who's always there with us. So to the extent we hold on to the anchor of Krishna by the practice of bhakti yoga, we'll find that we will be able to better process our anger and deal with the underlying issues more effectively. So let us pray to Krishna with the conclusion that anger is a great power that sometimes overpowers us. But oh Krishna, please give me the strength so that I can channel the power of anger instead of being controlled by that power. Thank you very much. Shri Krishna Bhagavan ki jai. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Are there any questions? Sure.
So, when the maid was walking down, right, in the hallways, and Ron's mother saw her, for what she did, listen, like, didn't she deserve what she got? Because, like, she was the one who were rocking out, manipulated Ron's stepmother, but didn't she deserve it? Because she was the one who
Okay, didn't she deserve it? It's a good question. Okay, yeah. The question is that when the maid Manthara when Shatrugna was angry with her and wanted to punish her, didn't she deserve it for what she did? Well, yes and no. Now, what happens is in many situations, there are some situations when justice is what is required, and there are some situations when mercy is required, or could say mercy or grace or forgiveness is required. And when justice and when forgiveness, that can vary from time to time. So generally we say forgiving is a good thing. But when is forgiving a good thing? See, there is, going back to earlier point of like hot-headed and cold-blooded, you can use two words similar. There's weakness and there is wickedness. Weakness means in a moment of anger, somebody does something terrible. Say we invite somebody to our house as a guest. And while they're in our house, they steal something from our house. Say, I invited you as a guest and you stole. What a terrible thing. And we were naturally angry. But then we come to know that they were under great financial pressure and they had this urgent need and that urgent need. And they've not never done like this, and then they are very repentant. So what happens is we may forgive them. So that was a moment of weakness. So when we are faced with a wrong, done due to weakness. Forgiveness is kindness. We should forgive. But imagine if the government makes it a default state policy. That anybody can steal from anywhere, we'll forgive it. You can steal from a shop, you can steal from a house, we'll forgive them all. What do you think will happen? What do you think will happen? Everyone still starts stealing. In fact, this is what is happening in California. The government has made a rule that anybody who steals, goes to any shops or big supermarkets and steals anything below $800, they will not even be arrested. So, what is the reason? Oh, it's poor people who are in great need will steal. They're stealing something which is not very expensive. But what happens is, people are also cunning. They steal something which is quite expensive colognes and something just below $800. They steal it and then they sell it. And they make money out of it. So the point is that if somebody is repeatedly doing something wrong, and they feel no remorse for it, they will be calculating to do it worse and worse, then that is wickedness. And if we forgive somebody who is wicked, they won't see it as kindness, they will see it as our foolishness, and they will hit back at us again. There's some terrorists going on a killing rampage, shooting everyone, and the terrorist runs out, and the police is chasing them. The police are about can shoot them now, and the terrorist has run out of bullets, and oh, terrorist, please forgive me. And the police lowers a gun, and the terrorist takes out a secret gun that they have behind and shoot the police. So if there is wickedness, forgiveness in the face of wickedness is foolishness. Forgiveness in the face of weakness is kindness. Is the difference clear? Weakness is something occasionally done. Wickedness is something regularly done. Weakness is done something which is doing something which is afterwards regretted. Wickedness means there's no regret. There's only celebration. Just see how many people I have, how much I could do and get away with. So what happens is that for both Manthara and Kaikeyi, they acted in a moment of weakness. And Kaikeyi had never done like that before, and Manthara had also been like a surrogate mother for her. She had been her maid since her childhood. And she had always been kind to her. So both of them in a moment of weakness did something terrible. That's why they said, okay, it was a terrible thing, or something that happened was bad, but they're not repeat offenders. So let's forgive them. That was the idea. Yeah?
But shouldn't they still know what they did wrong? So is it still right to confront them?
So eventually, they both realized their destiny. Kaikeyi especially realized it. What happened then? That Kaikeyi thought, see, when people do bad things, there are different reasons. Sometimes there are bad people who do bad things because they're just bad people. But there are sometimes good people who do bad things. And when good people do bad things, they often have to justify it to themselves. You know the word rationalize? What is the spelling of rationalize? Okay, doesn't even know the spelling of rationalize. What does it mean, rationalize?
Oh, rationalize, it's where you try to make excuses.
Trying to make excuses, to justify something wrong. So what is the spelling of rationalize? Okay, can I show you the forward? Okay. RATOINALIZE, rationalize. Can you pronounce another way also? RATIONALLIES, rational lies. So when we rationalize, we tell rational lies. We use our rationality to tell lies and to justify lies, to prop up the lies. So the point I was making over here is that, so when Kaikeyi did that whole thing, she was a good person, she was not a bad person. But in the moment of weakness, she did something terrible. So when good people do bad things, how do they justify it? They do it by imagining that they're doing it for someone else, that they're doing it for a good cause. And what was her good cause? Her good cause was, I'm doing this all for my son. My son deserves to be the king. Why is the kingdom going away from my son to Ram? She said, I'm doing all this for my son. And that's why everyone was criticizing her. Her husband was begging, don't do this. The royal priest, Vashishta, was saying, don't do this. She didn't listen. And she had constructed an imaginary Bharat. Her son's name was Bharat. She had constructed an imaginary Bharat. Who was appreciating? Oh, mother, you are doing you're taking so much difficulty for my sake. For ensuring my kingdom comes to me, you're doing so much difficulty. So she had created this Bharat in her mind. But when the real Bharat came back, and when he heard, she told, oh Bharat, the king has departed from the world, and the kingdom now awaits you. Bharat was shocked. The king has departed. Is that what happened? And then she told the whole story. And Bharat was aghast. He couldn't believe that his mother had done something like this. He couldn't believe that his mother had done all this using his name. And worst of all, he couldn't believe that his mother was telling him all these things and thinking that he would be pleased by this. And he said, you are not my mother. You are the goddess of destruction, incarnated in our family to destroy our entire family. He said, I reject you as my mother. Until he met Ram. And Ram told her, forgive Kaikeyi. Dashrath refused to call Kaikeyi his mother. So what happened was, why am I talking about this, is that when she had created an imaginary Bharat in her mind, who was approving what she was doing? When that imaginary Bharat collided with the real Bharat, and then she says, my God, what did I do? How could I have done such a thing? What possessed me? And afterwards, she severely repented what she did. And that was why she is not considered wicked. She acted in the moment of weakness, but she eventually repented what she did. She had great repentance and remorse for what she did. Does it answer your question?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So Prabhu, you mentioned it's true for both of them, Mantra as well as Kekai, that they both acted this way, just like for Kekai we can understand, but even for Mantra.
Yeah, so Mantra, there is not much reference to her in the Mahabharata, in the Ramayana thereafter. There's no mention of Mantra very explicitly when Lord Ram returns to the forest or the Uttarakhand. So overall, the understanding is that, like with respect to Mantra, she was also not an evil person. So she was a hunchback person. And in those days, people who had the physical deformities, often they were the butt of jokes and she used to tease. Friendly teasing, but still teasing. And when she became the favorite queen of the favorite maid of the favorite queen of the king, then she got a special position and nobody dared tease her now. So she wanted to protect herself in one sense. Sometimes our situations can explain our emotions, but they don't excuse our actions. I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling hurt, I'm feeling hateful toward this person. Okay, why? Because this happened. It can explain our emotions, but that doesn't excuse our actions. So she had also been a good person overall. She had her own insecurities because of which what she did. But there's no further there's no description in the Ramayana of she doing anything evil thereafter. And certainly no description of Kaikeyi being influenced by her doing anything evil. Thank you. Okay, yes.
But Mantra can be the excuse because she keep giving always to the Kaikeyi every day. If your son will be the king, he will get benefited. That statement keep repeated, right?
Well, that's the point.
That's the intensity of the person that is keep repeating. She can be in the category of the wicked, not in the.
No, so that's the point. That's the point I'm making. That there is no evidence that Kaikeyi had been spoken to like this by Manthara before or after. So all that happened was in one night itself. That Dashrath announced that I'm going to hand the throne over to Ram, and everybody started celebrating. And Manthara came to Kaikeyi, and Manthara told Kaikeyi, "Do you know what's happening? Do you know what this means for you? You have been the favorite queen, and now your son will become the king. The other queen, who has been neglected by the king, her son. So her son will become the queen, and then she will use that position to get back at him."
But in the Ramcharita Manas it mentioned, "Oh, in the Hame kya hani." Yes, it keep repeated.
But for how long? Because I read the Valmiki Ramayana. Valmiki Ramayana, everything happened within one day.
Oh.
That means one night actually.
Yeah, Swami Tulsidas stated, I mean,
Now, what does he say? No, she kept repeating that is true, but
yeah,
repeating in that
कोई
same
भी
night.
होए, कोई भी
Repeating
होए,
in that same night.
yeah, कोई भी होए, हमें क्या हानि? Means कोई भी राजा हो, हमें क्या फर्क पड़ता है? Means that is the taunting to the Kaikeyi. कोई राजा होगा तो तुम्हें क्या हानि होगी? Means what benefit you are going to get out of it? Then,
Yeah, I think we'll have to look at the context a little bit more. But overall, from the Valmiki Ramayana, what I think that it all happened very, very fast. There was definitely some level of scheming.
yes.
Definitely. But was it out of was it that Kaikeyi had an evil heart or Manthara had an evil heart? Well, it doesn't seem to. Kaikeyi and Manthara are never in the Lord Ramayana literature seen the way Shurpanakha is seen, or Ravan is seen, or Indrajit is seen. They are, Ravan, if you see, he has repeatedly done terrible things. This is the abduction of Sita was not the first wrongdoing he had done. He had tried to violate Vidavati before. He had actually violated Ramba. So there are many cases like that. So in the case of Manthara, there's no mention like that she was a repeat offender. And that particular statement she made repeatedly. That is true. Okay. Yes. Okay. Yes.
I can see anger like in two ways. One is something wrong being done towards others, something wrong being done towards us. When something wrong is done towards us and we feel angry, is that a sign of lack of humility? Because I think there is some expectation, there is some sense of I deserve something here which I'm not getting, which is because of I'm not completely humble. Can we always see that if I'm getting angry at something where I feel I'm wrong, it's because of some pride?
Okay. So if there is anger, because pride.
I was going to say the same line of question that there are people who are angry with somebody for 10 years, 20 years. They want to talk to them, but they think that something wrong has been done to them by somebody else. It could be your mom, your uncle, your friend, your dad. There are people who talk about for 20 years. And there's a hatred or anger still there. How would you help them reconcile in similar?
Yeah. Okay. More holistic with the related but still separately adding. So first is your question about if we're getting angry at something, just at some way we have been treated. Does that mean we lack humility? Possibly, but not necessarily. Because we could say at one level that if we completely free from ego, no matter however anyone acted, we would not get angry. That is true. But we all live in society, and for society to function, there is a certain level of accepted or acceptable behavior that is there. And somebody is not behaving the proper way, then it is for us to decide whether I can be of any service here or not. If I cannot be, then there's no point in my being here. So Srila Prabhupada tried to share Krishna Bhakti for almost 3-4 decades in India. He didn't get much response. Now, was he angry with India? No, he was just disappointed. And he decided to go to America, or come to America, and he decided to share Krishna Bhakti. But a good response here. So I would say anger can be a sign of lack of, or acting out of anger is a sign of lack of wisdom. When I say lack of humility, well, maybe not. Because there are sometimes we are treated wrongly. And in the name of humility, can we say that there is no kind of behavior that anyone would do to me that is wrong behavior? No, there is a right and wrong kind of behavior. After all, if we love God and respect God, then we should respect all parts of God, including this part of God. Of course, ego means I want far more respect than everyone else. That's ego. But to think that I should be able to take all kinds of disrespect. No one has a right to insult any part of God, including this part of God also. So I would say that that's to be time please circumstance. Sometimes our anger could be out of ego, but sometimes it could be just because the other person is treating us bad. Okay. So this answers this question. If somebody is, we've had hatred or we had anger because somebody has hurt us for a long time, what do? It's difficult. But unless somebody has, another person has at least some inclination to change, if they are not even aware that they have done something wrong and they're just brazen about it, then it's very difficult. It's very difficult to actually resolve the issue. I was once doing a mediation, and this person, he was telling person B that, you know, that I know you're angry with me. We said, I'm not angry with you. I'm not angry with you because anger is an expensive emotion and you are not worth my anger. You know, if somebody has that dismissive attitude, it's going to be very, very difficult to reconcile things. So it requires a perverse mind. You have to think like that. You're not worth my anger. So what happens is sometimes some wounds may not be healed directly in that relationship. We just have to keep a distance and hope that the wound will heal. But if somebody has hurt us and if we see that there are some signs that person is changing, then maybe we can take the first step forward in that direction and resolve. But how life works is that we have multiple relationships, and in some relationships we do good to the other person, but the other person treats us badly. So in one sense we get worse than what we have given. But there are other relationships in which we don't treat the other person so well, but the other person treats us much better. Sometimes in some relationships we get more than what we give. So there are relationships like that also. So you could say, in the ultimate analysis, life tends to be fair. But in each particular immediate analysis, it may not be fair. So it's like one of the challenges that we often overvalue the people who devalue us, and we undervalue the people who value us. And some person who may will not treat us well. Just want that, you know, not that that person respectful, that is appreciate, recognize what I did for them. But sometimes some people never do that. That's just the way they are. So even if we are not able to reconcile with that person, we can try, but that person is not ready to. See, love can be one way, but a loving relationship cannot be one way. Loving relationship has to be two way. So the other person is not ready to reconcile at all, even acknowledge they're wrong, then it's best to keep a distance and overall recognize that, okay, this person has been unfair with me, but yeah, there are other persons who have been kind to me, and that way we don't let our negativity toward that person spread over to negativity towards the world itself. Oh, life is so unfair. This person has been unfair to me, but if we see, yes, there are other people who have been more than fair with me, and people who have been kind to me more than what I deserve in that particular relationship, then at least we could say, like, there's cancer which stays in one part of the body and then it can be contained, but cancer spreads all over the body, then it becomes very difficult. So there may be negativity or anger toward one person. If it spreads toward others, then it becomes problematic. If it's that person, then gradually it will, distance itself may sometimes, distance or time itself may sometimes heal the wound. Okay. So last question, and we'll talk one to if any more questions. Yeah.
So the thing that you say, the attachment leads to anger, anger leads to hate, and hate leads to depression, right? Which is very much true in case when we have really an attachment, we love somebody, and or somebody who is dear to us, right? So how can we change these steps in such a way that probably we don't go to depression, but come back to attachment and love one more time? What actions or should we take? How we train ourselves?
Yeah, it's an important question. See, we have, with respect to attachment, there are two kinds of attachment. There's horizontal attachment with the people around us, and there's vertical attachment to God. So in the horizontal attachment, we have a relationship with our family, with our partners, with our children, with our parents, our siblings, friends. Now we are social creatures. There are we will bond with those people, and there will be relationships and attachments in that. We can't be hard-hearted or cold-hearted in a relationship. When Krishnas talk about detachment, we could say that detachment is not so much the opposite of attachment as the counterbalancer of attachment. So detachment does not mean not caring. Detachment doesn't mean not caring for people. It means not depending, not needing to get their approval all the time. That means I have certain principles, I want to live according to principles. And if somebody doesn't approve, well, I don't want to hurt them. I'm not acting this way to hurt them, but I'm acting this way because I have true to my principles. So attachment can become bad when that itself becomes the controlling factor in our life. Like if you consider, for a parent to have an attachment to a child is natural. But parents also have to make sure that sometimes you may have to do something which will displease the child. Child doesn't want to study, child wants to play. But the parents have to risk the displeasure of the child to get the child to study. So if our attachment becomes so strong that that starts controlling us, that's what happened in the Mahabharata with respect to Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana. So Duryodhana was doing terrible things, and Dhritarashtra himself was not a terrible person, but he was attached to a terrible person. So in the Mahabharata, Duryodhana is like the active villain, and Dhritarashtra is like the passive villain. So he just went along with all this. And Duryodhana was, although Dhritarashtra was the king, Duryodhana was the real person in power. It's like before the current government of India, the previous government that was there was one person on the prime minister's throne and there was another person in power. So it's something like that. Now what happened is that that's where Dhritarashtra's mistake was. Being attached to his son is not a problem. But being so attached to his son that he lost his own sense of intelligence, his own conscience. He did whatever his son, allowed his son to do whatever he wanted. That is where it became a problem. So if he had that vertical connection, if he had principles, principle of devotion, whatever we do, okay, I have this child, I have this partner, I have this relationship, they're important for me. But all of them are within the fabric of my relationship with God. I'm taking care of this child because this child is the child of God, entrusted to my care. That if we have that vertical relationship strong, if you're practicing bhakti strongly, then no horizontal relationship will completely control us. We will act responsibly, but we won't let that relationship control us. We won't let the person in that relationship manipulate us with play with our emotions. That's why attachment is not in itself a bad thing. But an attachment leads to it becoming, attachment becomes the sole controlling factor for our life decisions. That's when it becomes destructive. So thank you very much. Hare Krishna. So I have written a few books.
Yes, really, that's what I was going to request. So if you can briefly tell about each of them, that would be good.
Okay, so mostly I have written on the Bhagavad Gita. I've written on many topics, but the books I have here are based on the Bhagavad Gita. So much of what I talked about is there in this book. It's called 365 Reflections for Daily Mindfulness, based on the Bhagavad Gita. So there is one section on overcoming temptations, in which a lot of about anger is talked about, and these are the temptations. Then there is also how to be more positive, how to deal with others more sensitively, how to grow through life's distresses, and how to see life situations spiritually, how to be more sensitive in our speech. There are about 50-60 articles each on this topic. So 365 reflections based on the Bhagavad Gita. And this is Gita from an applicational perspective. And these are a part of a Gita study series. This is Bhagavad Gita Insight. This is more from Gita 100 articles. It's presented more from a rational perspective. That when we read the Gita, like this question of how can we not be attached? What does detachment mean? Does it mean cold-heartedness? If God controls everything, then do we really have free will? And if God is equal to everyone, then why is he on one side of the Kurukshetra battlefield? So those kind of questions you might come and read the Gita. What exactly is karma? Is everything destined? Those kind of our 100 questions, our 80 illustrations are there in this book. And then this is Bhagavad Gita more from a relational perspective. That means the relationship with Krishna and Arjuna, and ultimately the relationship between us and God. How Krishna and Arjuna are going through various emotions. And when Arjuna asks a question, what is he really thinking? Then Krishna is answering, saying a particular words. What are his thoughts? What are his emotions? What are his concerns? What are his purposes? So the Bhagavad Gita is understood in the light of the Mahabharata over here. If you're interested in Mahabharata stories and connecting them with Gita's wisdom, this book would be quite interesting for you. And then this is a calendar with 365 quotes based on the Bhagavad Gita. So each page has one quote. And the idea is that this is in a very accessible way we can connect with the Gita's wisdom. They're not direct Gita verses, but they're quotes inspired by the Gita. If you just Google the quote, you will find that there's an article on my website, gitadaily.com, where there's an article explaining the quote, explains connection with the words. But even without that, each quote is itself self-explanatory. And here, this is also a very easy way you can, or non-intrusive image, you can start spiritual discussions with others. Just keep this on your desk in your office or at home. And your friends, colleagues, relatives, they come, they see a quote, they are intrigued by it, they ask more about it, and you can start a discussion. So this is 365 quotes inspired by the Bhagavad Gita as a calendar. And so each of these is $15, this is $25. But you take all of them together, it's for $60. So thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So all the devotees who would like to take a book can come forward.